Emily Clark moved quickly through the crowded restaurant, balancing a tray full of drinks with steady hands. The place was full of noise, glasses clinking, people laughing, silverware tapping on plates. Nobody noticed her as she weaved through the tables. That's how it usually was. She was just the waitress, the one who took orders, brought food, and disappeared again. The restaurant was fancy. It had tall windows, soft golden lights, and a grand piano standing proudly in the corner, like a piece of art. Most of the guests came in expensive clothes, talking loudly about their jobs, their travels, their problems. Emily, dressed in her plain black uniform with her hair tied back in a low bun, didn't belong in their world. She knew it, and she had accepted it. Every day she walked the same streets to work, passed the same buildings, nodded at the same street vendor, and stepped through the back door of the restaurant. Her life had become a routine, quiet, repetitive, and invisible. She didn't complain, though. Emily wasn't the type to speak much. She listened more than she talked and smiled when needed. But sometimes, late at night, when her shift was over and the noise had faded, she would look at the piano in the corner and feel something stir inside her. No one knew who she really was. They didn't know that before she carried trays, she carried music in her heart. They didn't know that once, when she was much younger, she had played the piano so beautifully that people cried. But that life felt far away now, like a dream. That belonged to someone else. Emily's co-workers didn't treat her badly, but they didn't treat her like anything special either. To them, she was just Emily, the quiet girl who always showed up on time and did her job without causing any trouble. She wasn't close to anyone. She ate her lunch alone in the staff room and went home alone after her shift. The only person who ever really talked to her was the dishwasher, Carlos, an older man with tired eyes, who sometimes shared stories about his grandchildren. He once asked Emily if she played any instruments. She smiled and said no. Emily lived in a small one-bedroom apartment above a bakery. The walls were thin, and she could hear the oven buzzing in the mornings and the delivery truck arriving at night. She didn't mind. It was safe and quiet. In the corner of her bedroom, hidden under a cloth, was an old keyboard she had found at a thrift store 2 years ago. The keys were slightly yellow, and some of them stuck when pressed, but it worked. On nights when she couldn't sleep, Emily sat on a folding chair and played softly, letting the music fill the silence. Nobody ever heard her play. Not the neighbors, not her co-workers, not even the bakery owner downstairs. It was her secret, something she kept to herself like a piece of her soul she didn't want the world to damage. At the restaurant, customers came and went. Some were kind, some rude. Some tipped well, others left nothing. One night, a group of young men in expensive suits sat at a large table near the window. They were loud, laughing at their own jokes, waving her over like she was their servant instead of a person. One of them called her, "Hey, waitress girl," and asked for a drink menu like he couldn't be bothered to remember her name, even though she'd already told them. She nodded politely and brought what they asked. As she walked away, she heard them laughing. "Bet she dropped out of school," one of them said. "Yeah, probably flunked out of piano lessons too," another joked, pointing to the unused piano in the corner. Emily didn't react. She kept walking, her heart quiet but heavy. They didn't know anything about her. They never would. It wasn't always like this. Once, music had been everything to her. She started playing the piano when she was 5 years old. Her mother used to say she had magic in her fingers. Her father bought her a small second-hand keyboard and she played for hours, teaching herself songs by ear. When she was 9, she performed at her school talent show and got a standing ovation. People told her she had a gift. She believed them. By the time she was 12, she had played at churches, school events, and small local concerts. Her dream was to go to a music conservatory and become a concert pianist. But dreams have a way of changing when life gets hard. Her father died in a car accident when she was 15. Her mother worked 2 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet. Emily had 2 younger brothers who needed help with homework, school lunches, and bedtime stories. She started working part-time at a diner to support the family. Music took a back seat. Eventually, it disappeared completely from her daily life. By the time she graduated high school, college wasn't an option. She moved to the city and took the first job she could find, waiting tables. Now she was 22 and still working in restaurants. It had been years since she played for anyone other than herself. Her fingers still remembered the notes, but her heart sometimes forgot why it mattered. One afternoon during her short break, Emily stood near the window and watched the piano. A little girl was sitting at a nearby table with her parents. She pointed at the piano and asked her mother if someone would play it. The mother shook her head and said, "Not today, sweetie." The girl looked disappointed. Emily looked away and returned to the kitchen. She didn't know why that moment stayed with her, but it did. Sometimes she thought about asking the manager if she could play a song or two before the dinner rush, just for fun. But then she remembered the laughter, the way people looked at her like she was just part of the background, and she decided against it. She didn't want to become another joke. The truth was, Emily didn't feel brave anymore. She had been strong for so long, strong for her brothers, for her mother, for the bills and responsibilities and long hours. But music required a different kind of strength, the kind that meant showing your heart to the world. And Emily wasn't sure she could do that again. Still, every time she passed the piano, her fingers twitched slightly, as if they missed the keys. She wondered if the piano missed her too. That night, as she wiped down tables and refilled glasses, the sound of clapping echoed from the bar where someone had told a joke. She smiled faintly and moved on. Her life was not full of applause anymore. It was full of empty plates and polite nods, and yet something inside her was still alive, still waiting. A small voice that whispered, "You are more than this, but for." Now Emily stayed quiet, blending into the restaurant like another piece of the furniture. She took orders, brought food, and smiled when spoken to. No one saw her. No one knew her story. No one knew that the girl carrying their water glasses had once brought a room to tears with nothing but her hands and a piano. They laughed at the waitress because they thought she was nothing more than a servant, but they didn't know they were laughing at a hidden melody. And one day, that melody would be impossible to ignore. Emily Clark's life before the restaurant was very different from what it looked like now. But she didn't talk about it to anyone. It was a past she kept locked inside her heart, a past full of music, dreams, and pain. When Emily was a little girl, she loved the sound of the piano. It was her world. Her mother used to tell stories about how Emily's fingers seemed to dance on the keys, making music that was sweeter than anything anyone had ever heard. People from their small town would come to listen to her play. They would smile, some even shed tears, moved by the beauty of her music. For Emily, those moments were magical. When she played the piano, she felt free. It was as if she was speaking, without words, telling stories with each note. Her family was not rich. They lived in a small house with peeling paint and a creaky wooden floor. Money was always tight, but her parents did their best. Her father was a factory worker, and her mother took care of the house and children. They knew how special Emily was, and they encouraged her to practice. Every evening after finishing her homework, Emily would sit at the old upright piano her parents had saved up to buy and play for hours. She learned songs by listening to the radio, watching music shows on TV, and practicing from books. Her music teacher, Mrs. Hawkins, was strict but kind. She saw Emily's potential and pushed her to work hard. Emily won small competitions and was invited to perform at local events. She dreamed of one day playing in a big concert hall, with a bright spotlight on her and an audience listening silently to every note. But life changed suddenly when Emily was 15. Her father, the strong and cheerful man who always had a joke ready, was in a terrible car accident. He did not survive. The family was devastated. Emily's mother had to find more work to support the three children alone. The weight of responsibility fell heavily on everyone. Emily felt like her world had broken. The music seemed to disappear, swallowed by grief and worry. Her brothers looked up to her now, needing her to be strong. She started working after school and on weekends, cleaning houses and delivering newspapers. There was no time for music lessons or recitals anymore. The piano, once the center of her life, became just a piece of furniture in the corner of the living room. Her mother never told Emily to give up her music. She knew how much it meant to her. But survival came first. The bills had to be paid. The rent had to be met, and her younger brothers needed food and school supplies. Emily understood. She did not complain. She was determined to help her family. After finishing high school, Emily knew she could not afford college. Music schools were expensive, and scholarships were rare. She wanted to keep playing, but there was no way. She packed a small bag, said goodbye to her town, and moved to the city to find work. She hoped to save some money and maybe, someday, return to music. But the city was different. It was big, loud, and fast. People did not have time to listen to a young girl's story. Emily took jobs in restaurants and cafes, working long hours for little pay. She learned to hide her sadness behind a polite smile. The piano was still there, in the back of her mind, but it felt farther away than ever. She found a small apartment above a bakery, where the smell of fresh bread greeted her every morning. It was not a home filled with music, but it was safe and quiet. She bought a cheap keyboard from a thrift store and kept it hidden under a cloth. At night, when the world was asleep, she played softly. The notes brought her comfort. They reminded her of happier times and gave her hope. Even though she was no longer a student or a performer, Emily practiced every day. Her fingers remembered the movements, the rhythms, and the emotions she wanted to express. It was her way of holding on to who she was beneath the waitress uniform. Emily's co-workers never knew about her past. They thought she was shy and quiet, maybe a little strange. They joked about her being clumsy or slow, but she never reacted. She preferred to stay invisible. It was easier that way. She didn't want anyone to ask about her life or her dreams. She wasn't sure if she had any left. Sometimes, when the restaurant was quiet, she would glance at the grand piano in the corner. It was beautiful, polished, and waiting. She wondered who played it last, and who would play it next. The manager often booked professional musicians for weekends and special events. Emily had heard them practicing, their music floating through the air like a promise. She longed to join them but was too afraid. She thought about the little girl she saw one day pointing at the piano, asking her mother if someone would play. The girl's innocent hope made Emily's heart ache. She wished she could tell that child that music was still alive in her, that she had not forgotten. But the fear of failure and rejection held her back. The city was full of people chasing dreams, but most gave up quietly like Emily. Some found success, others found new paths, but many stayed in the shadows, their talents hidden. Emily didn't want to be one of those shadows. She wanted to shine again. She wanted to believe that her music could touch people's hearts, just like before. One day, while cleaning tables, Emily overheard a conversation between two customers about a piano competition in the city. The prize was a scholarship to a music school and a chance to perform on stage. The words stirred something deep inside her. She felt a flicker of courage but quickly pushed it away. She was just a waitress, not a pianist. No one would believe she could do it. Her life was filled with small moments of joy and sorrow. The laughter of children playing outside her window, the smell of coffee brewing in the morning, the sound of her own footsteps on the pavement. She found comfort in routine, but also felt trapped by it. At night, when the restaurant was empty and the lights dimmed, Emily sometimes imagined herself playing the grand piano in a big concert hall. She saw the faces of the audience, the gleam of the spotlight, and the smile on her mother's face. Those dreams kept her alive. But the past was never far. Sometimes memories came rushing back. Her father's laugh, her mother's gentle touch, the small fingers of her brothers holding hers. The music was part of those memories, a language of love and loss. Emily knew that she had to choose what kind of life she wanted. Could she keep hiding behind the apron, or was it time to face the world with her music again? The question haunted her. She didn't know the answer yet, but she hoped that one day someone would hear the song she had inside. Maybe, just maybe, that someone would be sitting in the restaurant watching her quietly, waiting for the moment she would play. Until then, Emily Clark stayed strong. She worked hard, kept her secrets, and held on to the music in her heart, waiting for the day she could share it with the world. It was a busy Friday night at the restaurant. The air was thick with the smells of fresh food and the sound of clinking glasses. People were laughing, chatting, and enjoying their meals. The lights were warm and soft, creating a cozy atmosphere. The grand piano shining under a spotlight in the corner sat silent. Usually on weekends, a talented pianist played music for the guests, filling the room with soft melodies. But tonight was different. The usual pianist had called in sick at the last minute, leaving the manager in a difficult situation. The manager, Mr. Sanders, was a kind but tired man who cared about his restaurant. He knew that the music added something special to the dining experience. Without it, the night would feel empty. He worried about how the customers would react, especially the regulars who came expecting the piano to be playing. Emily was working, her usual shift as a waitress. She moved through the tables, taking orders and delivering drinks with practiced ease. She felt the familiar tiredness in her legs and hands but kept going. It was just another night. She tried not to think too much about the empty piano in the corner. It reminded her of everything she had left behind. A group of customers had gathered near the window. They were loud and full of energy, dressed in sharp suits and expensive dresses. They talked over each other, laughing at their own jokes. One of them noticed Emily walking by and called out to her with a mocking tone, "Hey, waitress, you're not busy, are you? Why don't you play that piano for us?" he said, pointing at the silent instrument. His friends laughed loudly. "Yeah, let's see if she can play something better than silence," another joked. Emily felt her cheeks flush. She didn't like being the center of attention, especially not in that way. She smiled politely and tried to ignore them. But the laughter followed her like a shadow. Mr. Sanders heard the commotion and came over. He sighed, knowing that no one else was available to play. Turning to Emily, he said quietly, "Emily, could you please play something on the piano? Just for a few minutes? It might calm the guests down." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She looked at the piano, then back at the manager. She hesitated. Her hands trembled slightly. It had been so long since she had played in front of anyone. The fear she had tried to bury rose up inside her like a wave. The customers kept watching, some with skeptical expressions, others with curiosity. The same people who had laughed moments ago were now waiting to see what would happen. Emily felt like all eyes were on her, judging her. She took a deep breath and nodded. Slowly she walked toward the piano. The wooden bench felt cold under her as she sat down. She placed her hands on the keys and closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the feel of the piano. Her fingers began to move gently, finding the notes, as if they remembered a secret language. At first the music was soft and slow. It was a simple melody, something she used to play when she was a child. The room grew quieter. People stopped talking and turned toward the piano. The laughter faded away, replaced by a peaceful silence. As Emily played, the music became richer and more confident. Her fingers danced over the keys, telling a story without words. The melody was full of emotion, hope, sadness, strength, and joy. It was as if her heart was speaking through the piano. The customers watched in awe. Some had tears in their eyes. Others smiled, touched by the unexpected beauty. The man who had called her over earlier stopped smirking and leaned forward, listening carefully. The music filled the entire restaurant, wrapping around each table like a warm blanket. Even the kitchen staff paused, wiping their hands and listening. The bartender stopped mixing drinks, and the host stopped greeting new guests. Everyone was caught in the moment. When Emily finished playing, there was a brief pause. Then the room exploded in applause. People stood up, clapping loudly and cheering. Some called out for an encore. Emily felt a rush of emotion. She blinked, back tears, and smiled shyly. The group of customers who had mocked her were now full of admiration. One of them came forward and said, "That was incredible. You're amazing." Emily felt a warm glow inside her. For the first time in years, she felt seen, she felt proud. The music had reminded her and everyone else who she really was. After the performance, many guests came to congratulate her. Some asked where she had learned to play. Others took pictures and videos on their phones. Emily's manager looked at her with a proud smile. That night, Emily went home feeling different. The fear that had held her back started to melt away. She realized that she could still share her music with the world. She didn't have to hide anymore. The video of her playing went viral on social media. People from all over the city and even the country shared her story. They were inspired by the waitress who had stolen the show with her piano. Messages poured in, encouraging her to follow her dream. Emily knew that this was only the beginning. She still had challenges ahead, but for the first time she believed in herself again. The piano was no longer just a piece of furniture. It was her voice, her hope, her future. From that night on, Emily's life started to change. Doors that had been closed began to open. Invitations to perform at other places arrived. People wanted to hear her music, to know her story. But even with all the new attention, Emily stayed humble. She remembered the long days working in the restaurant, the laughter and the doubt. She never forgot the quiet girl who had sat alone, dreaming of music. The night of the broken strings, the night the pianist was absent, had become the night Emily found her voice again. It was a night she would never forget. A night when the invisible girl in the apron became the star of the show. After that unforgettable night when Emily played the piano at the restaurant, everything around her began to change in ways she never expected. The shy, quiet waitress who used to hide behind the apron was now the talk of the town. Videos of her performance spread quickly on social media, and people everywhere were amazed by the raw talent and emotion in her music. But Emily, deep inside, felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This new attention was thrilling but also scary. It was like stepping into a bright light after years of living in shadows. The next day at work, the atmosphere was different. Her co-workers whispered about her, some with admiration, others with envy. Customers who had never noticed her before now stopped to say hello or to ask if she would play again. Mr. Sanders, the restaurant manager, came to her with a proud smile and told her she could play the piano every weekend if she wanted. Emily felt a warmth in her chest she had not known for a long time. She nodded quietly, still unsure if she was ready for so much attention. At home, Emily's phone was buzzing, non-stop with messages. Friends, strangers, and even musicians she admired sent her words of encouragement. Invitations arrived from small cafes, art galleries, and even local music schools, asking her to perform or teach. It was overwhelming, but Emily felt a spark inside her, a spark of hope and possibility that she thought had died long ago. Despite the excitement, Emily knew that her journey would not be easy. She remembered the years she had spent away from music, the pain of losing her father, the responsibility of supporting her family. These memories sometimes made her doubt herself. Was she really ready to step back into the world of music? Could she face the challenges and pressures that came with being in the spotlight? One afternoon, Emily received a call from a well-known music teacher named Mr. Lawson. He had seen the video of her playing and was impressed by her natural talent. He wanted to offer her free lessons and guidance to help her improve and prepare for bigger performances. Emily was surprised and grateful, but also scared. She wasn't sure if she deserved such an opportunity. After talking to her mother and brothers, who all encouraged her to take the chance, Emily agreed to meet Mr. Lawson. Their first lesson was in a small, cozy music studio filled with instruments and music sheets. Mr. Lawson was patient and kind, but he also pushed Emily to work hard and believe in herself. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was on the right path. As the weeks passed, Emily practiced every day. She learned new techniques and songs, improving her skills. She discovered that music was not just about playing notes perfectly, but about telling stories and connecting with people. Mr. Lawson helped her find her own voice, encouraging her to express her emotions through the piano. At the restaurant, Emily's performances became a regular event. People came from far and wide to hear her play. Her music created a warm, welcoming atmosphere that made the restaurant special. Customers who once ignored her now treated her with respect and admiration. The group of young men who had mocked her before stayed silent when she played, their laughter replaced by awe. Emily's confidence grew, but she never forgot where she came from. She continued to work as a waitress, balancing her job with her music lessons and performances. The work was hard, and the hours were long, but she loved the feeling of progress and purpose. She was no longer just a waitress, she was an artist. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, a music producer named James approached Emily. He introduced himself and said he wanted to help her record an album. Emily was amazed. This was the kind of opportunity she had only dreamed about. But the idea of recording her music and sharing it with the world was also intimidating. She wondered if she was ready for such a big step. James was patient and supportive. He explained the process and promised to guide her every step of the way. Emily thought about her family, her dreams, and the hard work that had brought her to this moment. She decided to take the chance. The recording sessions were challenging. Emily had to learn to be patient with herself, to overcome mistakes, and to keep going even when she felt tired or unsure. She spent hours in the studio, pouring her heart into every note. The experience taught her more than she expected. Not just about music, but about herself. While Emily's career was blossoming, her personal life was also changing. Her family was proud of her, and they supported her in every way they could. Emily made new friends in the music community, people who understood her struggles and dreams. She felt less alone, but not everything was easy. Some nights the pressure to perform well and meet expectations weighed heavily on her. She missed the quiet times when she could play music just for herself. Sometimes the old fears and doubts crept back. She wondered if she could keep this up, if the success would last. During these moments, Emily would sit quietly at her keyboard at home, playing softly. The music reminded her of why she started and gave her strength to continue. She knew that the road ahead might be difficult, but she was ready to face it. One day, Emily was invited to play at a large music festival. It was a big stage with bright lights and a huge audience. The thought of performing in front of so many people made her nervous, but also excited. She practiced harder than ever, determined to give her best. The night of the festival arrived. Backstage, Emily felt her heart pounding. The lights, the crowd, the sounds, it was all new and overwhelming. But when she sat at the piano and placed her hands on the keys, a calmness washed over her. She played with all her heart, telling her story through music. The audience was silent, completely absorbed. When she finished, they erupted in applause. Emily smiled, tears of joy and relief streaming down her face. She had done it. She had faced her fears and shown the world who she was. Emily Clark's journey from a quiet waitress to a celebrated pianist was not just about music. It was about courage, hope, and never giving up on dreams. She had turned her pain into strength, her silence into song. And through it all, she remained humble and kind, grateful for every step of the way. Her story inspired many people, those who felt invisible, those who had lost hope, those who dreamed of a better life. Emily showed them that no matter where you start, no matter what challenges you face, it's never too late to find your voice and shine. And as she played her music, filling rooms with beauty and emotion, Emily knew that this was just the beginning of her story. There were still many songs to play, many hearts to touch, and many dreams to chase. She smiled, ready for whatever came next. Emily Clark's journey had been long and full of unexpected twists and turns. From a quiet waitress overlooked by many to a pianist whose music touched hearts, she had learned many lessons along the way. But part 5 of her story was about what happened after the applause died down, after the lights dimmed, and after the world stopped watching for a moment. It was about the deeper meaning of her journey and how she continued to grow, both as an artist and as a person. After her big festival performance, Emily was no longer just the girl who had amazed people at the restaurant. She had become a symbol of hope, inspiration, and resilience. People reached out to her with stories of their own struggles and dreams. They thanked her for reminding them that it was never too late to chase what made their hearts sing. Emily was touched by these messages, but she also felt a heavy responsibility. She wanted to do more than just play music. She wanted to make a difference. With the help of her manager and friends in the music world, Emily decided to start a small music school for children from low-income families. She remembered her own childhood, how important it was to have support and encouragement. Many talented kids in her city didn't have the chance to learn music because their families couldn't afford lessons or instruments. Emily wanted to change that. The school was a humble place at first, a small rented room with a few old keyboards, some sheet music, and a lot of hope. Emily taught the children herself, sharing not just music skills but stories about perseverance, dreams, and believing in oneself. She saw the joy in their eyes as they learned to play their first songs, and she felt a deep sense of purpose. The school grew slowly. More students came, and Emily received donations and support from local businesses and music lovers. She worked hard to balance her own career with teaching and running the school. It was exhausting, but every smile and every note played by her students made it worth it. Through this work, Emily learned new things about herself. She discovered patience she didn't know she had. She learned how to inspire others and how to be a leader. She realized that success wasn't just about fame or money, but about making a positive impact on the lives of others. Emily also continued her own music career. She recorded her first album, which was a collection of songs that told her story, melodies, full of hope, loss, courage, and joy. The album was well received, and critics praised her for the emotional depth and sincerity of her music. She toured small venues, playing for people who loved music and believed in her message. Despite all the new opportunities, Emily stayed humble. She never forgot the years of struggle, the nights when she doubted herself, and the people who laughed at her. Those experiences made her stronger and more grateful. She made a promise to herself to always remember where she came from, and to help others find their own voices. One day, Emily received a letter from a young girl named Sarah. Sarah lived in a distant town and had been learning piano at Emily's school through online lessons. She told Emily how much her story and music had inspired her to keep practicing despite her own hardships. Sarah wanted to become a professional pianist someday. Emily was deeply moved. She wrote back to Sarah, encouraging her to never give up and to always believe in the power of music. This connection reminded Emily of the importance of community and support. She realized that her journey was not just about her own success, but about building a network of people who could help each other grow and succeed. She started organizing music workshops, concerts, and events that brought people together, creating a space where talent and passion could flourish. As years passed, Emily's life continued to change. She experienced the highs and lows of being an artist, exciting performances, moments of doubt, new friendships, and challenges. But through it all, music remained her anchor. It was the language that connected her to the world and to herself. Emily also found time for personal happiness. She met people who shared her love of music and understood her journey. She formed close friendships and eventually found a partner who supported her dreams and shared her values. Their relationship was built on respect, love, and mutual encouragement. Looking back, Emily often thought about that night when she first touched the piano at the restaurant and stole the show. That moment had changed everything. It was the start of a new chapter, a turning point that showed her the power of courage and self-belief. It reminded her that sometimes the smallest step can lead to the biggest changes. Emily's story was no longer just about her. It was about the countless people whose lives she had touched through her music and her work. It was about hope, perseverance, and the belief that everyone has something special to offer. She dreamed of continuing to inspire others, to help more young musicians find their path, and to keep playing music that moved hearts. She knew that life would bring new challenges, but she was ready for them. Because she had learned that true success is not measured by fame or fortune, but by the joy and meaning you bring to the world. Emily Clark's journey was a testament to the power of dreams, the strength of the human spirit, and the magic of music. From a waitress laughed at to a pianist celebrated by many, she showed that with courage, passion, and kindness, anything is possible. And as she sat at the piano, playing her favorite song one quiet evening, Emily smiled, knowing that her story was still unfolding, full of hope, love, and endless possibilities.